Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski's Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski's Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. This is going to be a pretty quick episode. The Bulls are in All-Star Weekend. The Blackhawks have played a few games, but I have a few DVR'd. I haven't watched them all, so I wanted to get a better picture before I start talking. Cubs, Sox haven't been doing anything, so we're going to talk mostly NFL draft and a few quick Bears notes. But before we start, I'd like to mention our sponsors. First is the Rockford Ice Hogs. The Ice Hogs dispatched the first, second, and fourth ranked teams in the Western Conference in consecutive nights as they swept their weekend 3-3 set. After leaving Milwaukee with a 2-1 victory on Friday, Rockford defended their home ice against a pair of Western Division foes, beating first-place Oklahoma City 3-1 on Saturday and San Antonio 2-1 on Sunday. Their next home game is Friday, March 6th. The Ice Hogs are set to celebrate Youth Hockey Night in the community as they take on Oklahoma City Barons on Rockford Hockey Club night. Come early for another Blue Flame Lounge pregame party, fans 21 and over, including free appetizers and drink specials. Doors for the Blues Flame Lounge will open at 5:15 p.m. Puck drops at 7 p.m. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Get tickets and more at icehogs.com. Also, Bill Swerski's Sports Talk Chicago is brought to you by our latest sponsor, audible.com. If you head over to audible.com/Swerski Sports, you'll get to download one free audiobook of your choice. Some really great options include Tales from the Chicago Blackhawks Locker Room, a collection of the greatest Blackhawks stories ever told. Stories from the original years all the way to the 2010 Stanley Cup run. If football is more your speed, there's Monsters, the 1985 Chicago Bears and the Wild Heart of Football. Or the amazing Michael Jordan, The Life. The absolute end-all, be-all of Michael Jordan biographies and one of the greatest biographies of all time. Check out any one of these titles or any number of 100,000 others for absolutely free by going to audible.com/Swerski Sports. That's audible.com/SWERSKI Sports. And then one more thing I'd like to do is I want to take a moment of silence to remember the loss of former Blackhawks player Steve Montador and former Cubs third base coach Wendell Kim. Kim was 64 years old. Steve Montador was only 35 years old. Remember, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. So on to Chicago football and the NFL draft there's a lot of talk that the Bears are going to be moving to a 3-4 from their complete history of being a 4-3. I've been asked by a lot of people what I think about it, who's going to go, who's going to stay, and that's a big switch. I feel like they're better off playing a base 4-3 with some 3-4 hybrid type plays, switching up a little bit rather than being a base 3-4. They just don't have the personnel to do a 3-4 right now. And I feel like if you make that complete switch to being a base 3-4, you're sort of setting yourself back a few years. I mean, I know there's a lot of need in this defense for players, but there's at least some pieces in the puzzle that are already there on a 4-3. I mean, Jared Allen is already on your team. And what happens if you transition to a 3-4? Where does he play? He doesn't want to play outside linebacker. and he doesn't fit as a defensive end in a 3-4, and you're locked into him for $12 million. You're sort of in a hit if you cut him, but he fits a 4-3, and he can play at a high level in a 4-3 if you could put some pieces around him. Also, you need to have another cornerback, and you need some press coverage guys, some guys that can play man to man, and really all you have is Kyle Fuller. I don't see Peanut Tillman coming back. Tim Jennings is just not that good. Who else do you have? You're not going to be able to mask your bad corners by playing zone. So you're going to need at least 2 corners. And you're going to have to add a 3-4 defensive tackle. The guys you have, they're just not space eaters. They're not Ted Washingtons. They're not Haloti Nadas. They're not these giant men that could just clog space and take up 2 gaps. The Bears don't have anybody like that. Jay Ratliff maybe can play that a little bit. Ego Ferguson might be able to play a little bit of that, but that's about it. Whereas if you do some sort of hybrid defense and you stay in a base 4-3 and then switch it up a little bit, sure, for 10 snaps, 15 snaps a game, you can have a Ego Ferguson or Jay Ratliff play that nose tackle position. You could have, you could take a guy like Jared Allen. You could take him out of the game, and you could put in somebody else to play outside linebacker, even a Shea McClellan. But you just don't have the pieces in there to be a base 3-4, and you're going to be setting yourself back another year or two in order to give yourself time and cap space to be able to bring in all the players you need. So if you do some sort of base 4-3 that's a hybrid this year, you can use that as a eventual transition over to a 3-4 without having to blow your whole load in this one off season. So if the Bears are going to play a 4-3 and stay there 4-3 to be competitive next year, at minimum they're going to need another defensive end. Sure, you have Lamar Houston and Willie Young, but those guys aren't going to be ready for the start of the season. It's not going to happen. You're going to need help as well once they come back. You need more defensive ends. So you need another defensive end. You need a middle linebacker. Not just because this is Chicago, but because you need a stabilizing middle linebacker in order to have a good defense or even a respectable defense. You need a free safety. You can cheat a little bit with your strong safety, playing him close to the line, but that free safety is that's just a glaring hole in your secondary right now. And you need another cornerback. Just that, no 2 ways about it. But if you switch over to a 3-4 base, you're going to need an outside linebacker. You're going to need a middle linebacker. You're going to need a 3-4 defensive tackle. You're going to need a free safety. You're going to need 2 cornerbacks. That's a lot of players to add in one off season. And what about offense? What do they need to add? You need right tackle competition. Whether that person starts or not, you need to add competition at that right tackle spot. If nothing else, to motivate, and get the best productivity out of the guys you have. And if you end up moving Brandon Marshall or parting ways with Brandon Marshall, you're going to need another wide receiver. So who's available out there anyway? Just looking at the defense as a 4-3 defensive ends, you've got Greg Hardy and Jason Pierre-Paul. Greg Hardy's a little bit of an iffy one because you have no idea if he's going to be suspended by the league, even though his case was dismissed in court. You don't know what's going to happen, so he's a little bit iffy. And another iffy factor is Jason Pierre-Paul. He hasn't had the productivity. He's had injury problems. Do you take a chance on Jason Pierre-Paul, even though he's going to want some pretty big money? Defensive tackles. You got Nick Fairley. He's played pretty well, albeit he had some injury problems in Detroit, but he played in the shadow of Ndamukong Suh, who is also available. So you have Ndamukong Suh, who's available as a free agent. And I don't see him returning to the Lions, because if they franchise tag him, he's looking at like $27 million from 1 year. That's a lot of money to pay a defensive tackle. That's more than you pay your quarterback. You just really can't do that. So I see Ndamukong Suh as a guy that's going to move on. Also, another interesting one is Henry Melton. Left the Bears after an injury, lost season due to an injury. Goes down to Dallas, has pretty decent production. Nothing terrible. But they decided not to pick up his option, so you have Henry Melton available. And then re-signing Stephen Priya. Outside linebacker position, this is where you're going to have to spend money, but there are some guys out there. You've got John Abraham, who's old and some injury history. Does he come back? Dwight Freeney, same thing. But then you get Justin Houston. He's a free agent, 22 sacks last year. That would be some nice productivity. That's really going to help shape your defense. If you have a guy with 22 sacks coming there and you have him lined up with some of the other guys they have, it sort of masks a lot of the bad defensive backs that you have in the Bears, because they're not going to be on an island. That quarterback's going to be forced out of the pocket and be hurried at the bare minimum to have to make passes on the quick rather than letting a whole play set up. And then the often injured Brian Arakpo. He's great when he's healthy, not often healthy. Safeties, you got Devin McCourty from the Patriots, so you got a Super Bowl winning experience. Is Bill Belichick gonna let him go? I don't know. And Denoris Searcy. So a little slim on safeties, but at least there's some options there. Cornerbacks, you got Byron Maxwell, Antonio Cromartie, and Brandon Flowers. So you've got guys that have some experience in the league. They're not going to come cheap. You got to ask yourself, is how valuable is the safety position to you versus what you can get in the draft, and versus what you're going to have to pay somebody in free agency, which is going to lead us into our talk today about the cornerbacks that are in the NFL draft. But one more position I wanted to mention is the inside linebackers, the middle linebackers. There is some talent, although it's older talent, but at least that could be a stopgap until you can actually develop somebody or draft somebody. You have Brandon Spikes, Rolando McClain, Ray Maualuga. So you've got some interesting names in there that are going to be available that you could bring in. That's going to bring us to what the main part of the talk today is who's available at cornerback in the NFL draft. We've already gone through a lot of the positions. We've gone through quarterbacks, the defensive tackles, the running backs. So now we're going to focus on the cornerbacks this week. Next week, we're going to do the wide receivers. The first cornerback I want to talk about is Trey Waynes, 6'1", 182 pounds, out of Michigan State. Pros, he's a great tackler, really physical. He's not afraid to put his helmet in and make a tackle or break up a play. He can play man coverage. He's got great instincts. Comes from a really solid defensive program in Michigan State. Loose hips. Some of the cons, though, and I'm being really nitpicky here because I think he's a really talented guy. He doesn't have ideal speed. He doesn't have the best press off the snap. So when he's trying to hand check and press the guy off the ball, he's not really strong enough to alter the timing of the pattern and the pattern itself for the wide receiver. He's going to have to work on that. And he needs to fill out his frame a little bit and get stronger. But he's a solid quarterback, and somebody's going to get a good player. I don't rank him as highly as I ranked Kyle Fuller last year, but to be honest, I ranked Kyle Fuller really high. And if you watch the Bears games before Kyle Fuller had all the nagging injuries, you can see why I ranked him so high. Easily the best cornerback in the draft last year. But Trey Waynes is a really quality cornerback, and somebody's going to get a good value for him. Next is Jalen Collins, 6'2", 195 out of LSU. He's really big and stout as a corner. I mean, he's really big and stout. He's got great play off the press coverage, plays tight man-on-man, pretty athletic for his size, but his hips are really tight. He gets a bit confused on misdirection wide receiver plays, so if they have bunch formations, bubble screens, any kind of misdirection type things, he really gets confused. When his Wonderlic score comes out, I bet it's not going to be that high. So you're going to have to really mentor him in order to get the defensive plays down pat. The question is, he doesn't play as well off the ball as he does pressing. So if he's away from it and backpedaling, he's not as effective as he is when he's straight up across the man at the line of scrimmage and you can hand press him. And he doesn't play as fast as his speed. So his football speed and his in-short speed don't really equate. He's a really intriguing cornerback. He has the potential to be really great, but the question is, how high do you value him? If he's available in the late second round, oh yeah, you absolutely nab this guy. But do you bite on him any earlier than that? I don't know. That's going to be up to the individual GM. If it's me, I probably don't pick him up until middle of the second at the earliest, just because there's some question marks to him in his game, and I don't know how it's going to translate. But he does have the potential to be a really good physical man-to-man cornerback. Next is Kevin Johnson, 6'1", 175 out of Wake Forest. Pros, he is football fast. Great productivity in his senior year. Really great back pedal. But he plays much smaller than he is. He's 6'1", which is pretty decent size for a cornerback. But he just doesn't play that big. He looks like he's much smaller, and I wonder if that's going to come out in the combine is that he is shorter than that, because he looks it. He's not that physical. He's likely going to have to play for a team that plays a lot of cornerback zones. I really see him more as a free safety than a cornerback. I'm just not that high on Kevin Johnson. I know a lot of the draft sites rank him pretty high, because I go through those as well and kind of see what other people are thinking and to see if I'm really off base or not. But this is one I disagree with a lot of people. Is I don't value Kevin Johnson that high. He just doesn't scream NFL caliber cornerback to me. Another guy that everybody seems to be high on is Alex Carter, 6 foot even, 200 pounds out of Stanford. He's a big cornerback. He looks bigger than his numbers portray that he is. He's really physical with wide receivers as well, but he lacks high-end recovery speed. So if he's playing off of you and you do a curl route or a stop and go, he's not going to be able to catch up once there's separation. He just doesn't have that recovering speed. He's a bit stiff in the hips. And when I talk about being stiff in the hips, is if you're a big NFL fan, you probably understand that. But if you're not, having loose hips as a cornerback is really essential, because you have to be able to, from a back pedal, turn and be able to run with the wide receiver who's running a fly route, or back pedal, and then stop and press off and push forward on a curl route, or be able to make that cut. And that's all coming from your hips. So you have to have flexible hips and be able to make those turns really quickly. Guys with tight hips, they're slow on those changes in direction, and that's where they get burned. Guys with quick, loose hips, they're able to make that transition very easily and look seamless, like they know the route that the wide receiver is running. So that's why hips are important. So again, he's a bit stiff in the hips, not a great back pedal, so he cheats a lot by turning his hips from the snap. And again, this is another thing to watch for with cornerbacks, is you want a guy who can back pedal, because when you're lined up with a guy, is a lot of times he'll back pedal, assuming that he's going to be in a certain type of route, and then you want him to have nice hips to turn and then be able to run in the same direction that the wide receiver is, rather than back pedal. But the back pedal allows you to your back, and then you can push off that back foot and then go forward really quickly. Like if it's a run play, or if it's a short passing route, or if you want to break a slant pass, or if it's an in route or something, you can break on that much easier. So you want a guy who can back pedal. When you cheat by turning your hips and you're kind of running you're running the correct direction with just your waist turn, is if they end up going to the other side and you have to completely turn your hips, you are going to lose position of where the ball is, because you're going to have to completely look away from the ball. You're going to have to completely look off your man, and that's just not good. What if they break the other direction? What if you're playing the slot position and he breaks the opposite way of you? You're going to be burned for a big play. You can't be cheating like that by not having your hips correctly positioned. So watching him play, he cheats a lot by turning his hips from the snap. He's not always willing to put his helmet on a big play, and he's not a big hitter. Too many tackles where he just pulls somebody down or drags somebody down rather than actually tackling them. A lot of people are really high on Alex Carter, and I'm just not seeing it. He'll have to be a zone corner if he actually makes it in the NFL, because he doesn't have the speed or the hips to play tight man coverage on a good wide receiver. Then PJ Williams, 6 foot tall, 196 out of Florida State. Pros, he's got good football speed. He's got the best cornerback intangibles I've seen in a while. So by intangibles, I mean he can sort of diagnose the play. He sees what's going on. He's got football smarts, and he's able to, if a play breaks down, recognize what's happening and instinctually make up the play and recover. He's not afraid to run through a block to stretch out a run players, put his helmet in to stop a run. So, I mean, there's plays where it looks like it's a stretch outside, and the offensive line is trying to stretch to get the wide receiver to the corner. And he will go right in there and blow that play up. He has no fear in there. He will head-on collision, take on the running back. Doesn't matter. He goes for the strip on tackles. He shows his love for the game on the field, and he's a great blitzer. Some of the cons, though, because he's not a perfect corner by any means, is he doesn't have the most fluid hips, so he's a little stiff in the hips a bit. Doesn't have elite speed. He's got good speed, but not elite speed. Sometimes too eager and gets out of position, and he's going to need to watch his physical hand checking in the NFL because they're really being strict on that. So he's a handsy cornerback. He needs to tackle better because sometimes he just misses tackles. But it's not due to lack of willing that he wants to tackle, he just sometimes misses going for the strip. And sometimes he'll give up extra yardage trying to get the strip on the ball when it's just not going to happen. Sometimes you just need to take the guy down. I absolutely love watching PJ Williams play. He reminds me a lot of Antoine Winfield. He has all these amazing qualities, but he hasn't quite put together in a consistent package yet. You'll get flashes of an absolutely brilliant cornerback, and then he'll get burned by a deep play. Cough, Oklahoma State cough. So GMs will be a bit tentative about him, but he has the talent to be a top 10 to 15 pick. But he'll have to work really hard on game film and studying the playbook to maximize his potential. I don't think he's a great fit for a zone defense. He seems much better, much more comfortable as a cornerback when he can line up a man coverage. It seems that he likes to have a hand on the receiver. It helps him with better coverage and be able to shadow that wide receiver. He seems much more focused in man coverage as well. If I'm a GM, I gamble on him in the late first. If he can't put it together as a corner, he'd be a great strong safety. Maybe even a better fit at strong safety. But I have no reservations about drafting a PJ Williams. He's just a tough, solid football player, and I'd love to see him on the Bears. And then there's Priya Lomu from Oregon, 5'10", 195. Pros, he's got good speed, very physical, good instincts, can play man or zone, doesn't shy away from contact. Cons, needs to be a better tackler. Way too many pass interference calls. He suffered a really bad knee injury before the bowl game. He's not the flashiest corner. Doesn't do anything great. And he's not the best at playing off the ball and then recovering, closing in and recovering on the wide receiver. He's at his best at short to intermediate routes and breaking up passes. So being able to jump the gun and breaking up these short and intermediate routes. I don't think he's quite 5'10", like they say they list him on the program guide. He looks a little bit small out there. And with his knee injury, I don't know if I'd take a chance on him before the third. is he's got some already question marks in my book on the deeper routes and some of the pass interference type things. And he's got that knee injury. He already didn't have the best of wheels. So, he had decent speed, but not elite speed. So you're going to lose a little bit of wheels on him, I think. I don't know if I kind of let him go and see if he falls. Next is Kevin White, 5'9", 180 out of Texas Christian. One of the best Senior Bowl practices this year. So he was really great in the Senior Bowl practice, which is scouts will have their eye on that. Great at tracking the ball. So when he's out there and on the deep passes, when he's tracking that ball like he's the wide receiver, and he's going to go up and get it like a wide receiver. He's got decent speed, fluid hips, tracks the ball in the air really well. Physical for his size. At 5'9", he's still pretty physical, and he attacks the run. When it's a run play, he goes at it and tries to make that tackle. A lot of cornerbacks will just sort of see if the linebackers can't bring it down or the safety can't bring him down, and then he'll come in for the tackle. But Kevin White goes in there, and he wants to make that tackle. Cons, he's short. That's really the biggest knock on him. He's going to have to add strength, and he's not going to be a shutdown corner, but he's a guy that can go deep and is not going to get burned because he plays the ball in the air pretty well. Marcus Peters, 5'11", 193 out of Washington. Pros, big and strong enough to effectively press off the snap. Can run with most of the wide receivers on any of the big routes. But cons, he's got some major red flags. He was booted from the team after multiple run-ins with coaching staff. He's going to need to do some major life reconsiderations if he's going to stick in the NFL, because they're really general managers and coaches and officials from teams are going to hammer this guy with questions about his character and whether or not he has the fortitude to be an NFL player. He gives up on plays a lot, which is just not okay in my book. And he's not always willing to stick his nose in there to make tackles. He'll run in there and at the last second and put his shoulder in somebody that's already being wrapped up, or he'll just run over there to make sure they don't break away. But he just doesn't seem to want to make that tackle. And he's way too willing to drag a guy down rather than make a tackle. And that might work in college, but in the NFL, a guy like Adrian Peterson, you try to drag him down by his leg, and he is just going to break right through that and run for a big gain. He is not the guy, Marcus Peters is not the guy you want on a rebuilding team. He needs to be in a locker room where there's a guy like a Ray Lewis that's going to put you in your place. He's got the talent, but it takes more than that to succeed in the NFL, and I don't touch him with a 10-foot pole. He's damaged goods in my book. Nexus Charles Gaines, 5'11", 175 out of Louisville. Really fast, great hands. He can play gunner on special teams. He's at his best as a cornerback when the play goes deep and the ball is thrown deep. So he's best on deeper plays where he can track the ball in the air. Cons, he's going to need to fill out his frame a little bit and get stronger. He's only 175 pounds. Too many shoulders rather than actual tackles. So he's putting his shoulder in a guy and expecting to take him down rather than wrapping up and making a proper tackle. And at 175, I mean, if you're 250, sure, maybe you can take a shoulder and knock somebody down. But at 175 in the NFL, you're not going to do that. You're going to have to wrap people up. He doesn't backpedal a lot. And that makes it hard to come back on curl routes. So I don't know if he's just not comfortable with it or if he just played lazy, but watching game film, I didn't see him backpedal a lot. He's going to have to keep working on his fundamentals. And if you look at him, he hasn't been a cornerback for very long. He's a converted wide receiver. So he's still really raw, but he's got the makings of a decent cornerback. And I think he's not going to go that high just because of some of the things I said where he doesn't have a good back pedal. It doesn't tackle well yet. But he's only been a cornerback for about a year. So I think he's got the potential, and I would take a flyer on him third round or so. And then the last guy we're going to talk about is Quentin Rollins, 5'11", 193 out of Miami of Ohio. Pros, he's fundamentally very sound. Good technique, solid build, but even though he's a solid build, he's still clearly got some room to get bigger. He's a fairly good tackler, but he's also got fairly stiff hips, lacks elite speed, and he's not that willing to step in and stop the run. He played basketball in Miami, Ohio, and he said he's committed to the NFL over the NBA. And if you watched him at the Senior Bowl, he's got some really good raw speed, but that just isn't seen on the football field transition into really good football speed. All in all, this class of cornerbacks is pretty interesting because usually you'll see a big crop of shorter cornerbacks, and this is actually a crop of pretty big cornerbacks, a lot of guys over 6 foot and over. And that's good because you're seeing taller and taller wide receivers. And if you got a 6'5" wide receiver, you don't want a 5'9" cornerback covering him because that's a lot of height to make up and a lot of leaping ability to jump up and take away. But at least when you have a 6'1", 6'2" guy, is that adds room, especially when you add in your reach. It makes it much more easy to cover a guy that's 6'4", 6'5". Again, there's some interesting prospects in here, and depending on what sort of system the Bears play, if they end up going with a 3-4, they're going to want some guys that can play man coverage. But if they stay a 4-3, they can still get away with guys that can play more of a zone coverage, which is most of these guys. If there's anybody I didn't hit up, there was a few more guys I wanted to do, but I just couldn't get my hands on any game film of them. So I watched a few highlights, but I hate breaking down guys based off of highlights because all you do is seeing them at their best. I want to see guys at their best. I want to see guys at their worst, and I want to see guys when they're not even involved in the play. You get a guy like Marcus Peters, and you watch him on when it's a run play the opposite direction of him, or he's covering a guy that goes deep and the pass is underneath, or his guy goes underneath and the play goes deep. You watch him and he just doesn't care. He's not out there hustling to make the play. He's not doing anything. So I like to see all of those things. I like to see every snap for an entire game and watch just that player, because you really get a good look of the guy's tendencies, times that he takes plays off, times that he's hustling, and so if I can't get film of a whole game of a player, I may watch highlights, but I'm not going to judge them on highlights because everybody looks good in highlights. But again, if there's a cornerback or any other position that I've covered that I haven't gone through on the guy you're looking for, is definitely hit me up. I'm more than willing to go back, and if I have footage, re-review them and then have them on the next episode. So if you want to get in touch with me, you go to swerskisports.com. All the contact information is on there, or you can tweet me at swerskisports, facebook.com/swerskisports, any of those methods, and you get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that I cover the guy. I know last year there was a few guys that people asked about, and this year there's already been a couple. So I'll definitely go back through and review anybody I missed, because somewhere I have to draw the line, because there's a lot of guys in the draft, and I can't cover everybody because it's time consuming to do all this. But if there's guys you want to see, I'm more than willing to take a look. And absolutely, once the Bears draft, if there's guys I haven't taken a look at, I will indeed go back and review them and have my whole analysis of the Bears draft. And then next week we will do wide receivers. So that should be interesting because that could be a position of need for the Chicago Bears if they end up moving on from Brandon Marshall. And that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I know it wasn't a long episode nor exciting episode, but it's been a busy week, and I wanted to make sure I got the cornerbacks covered. Next week we'll do more Bulls Blackhawks. There might even be some baseball news because we're coming close to pitchers and catchers reporting. And hopefully we'll have a guest on next week. So thanks for checking us out, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win. Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van. And she looks like...
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down,